Welcome to a football show Thursday edition here. We are, in fact, Zach.
You're back.
Back in studio, Cast Collective here in the heart of Nashville on Music Row. If you want to book the space for a private event, at Cast_Collective on Instagram. Slide up into those DMs. But it is great to be back in our actual like home away from home, Zach. He's Zach, by the way. I'm Braden.
I relish any chance to get out of the house. I mean, I love Goodlettsville. Don't really have, and I love our house and I love our neighborhood and everything. But I love getting out of the house at this point.
Yeah, I realized through the pandemic, and we're going to talk football on a football show, by the way. I realized through the pandemic that I was far more appreciative of an office space environment than I really thought. I thought I wanted to work from home, and then I started doing it for the last 18 months, and I really enjoy coming to the Cast Collective studio here in the heart of Nashville on Music Row. Again, Cast_Collective. So a football show brought to you by Kingston Group, the Kingston Group. BuildKG.com is the website, Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. If you have any big decisions about your house, you know the drill, folks. We've told you over and over again now. They've been a partner of 440 Sports for 2 years now, almost. There's no reason to make a big decision about your house, Zach, without talking to the Kingston Group.
Got to talk to the Kingston Group. I mean, why? It's like saying that, oh, I'm not going to go talk to a doctor if I'm sick.
I know a lot of people that do that.
Well, they probably should.
It's not smart.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
Make sure you chime in there as well on the YouTubes and the comments and the Facebook and the Twitters. You can put all the comments in there. We'll make sure we get to you guys as the show unfolds today. The SEC meetings took place. Not a whole lot happened, so we'll actually try to explain to you guys later on in the show what actually took place from Destin. But a lot of time we're going to spend today focused on OTAs, focused on the offensive line in particular for the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, we will mention Treylon Burks' name because it feels like it's something we have to do. We're contractually obligated, sort of like mentor Gate. I hate the fact that we do that with Gate, but we're going to talk about all this stuff today on the show. So glad to have you in, and make sure you're tuned into BroadwaySportsMedia.com. You got the F Words Pod, all the other great shows from 440 Sports. I think that's all the bills, Zach.
You got to go to the YouTube 440 Sports
that's right.
For sure, because you need to be sharing it. You need to be watching it. You need to be commenting, letting us talk to you. You talk to them. So
like. I got people yelling at me off camera here to make sure we're liking things, and
like everything, subscribe to everything, set notifications on, share it, everything that you need to do. There's like 4 things you need to push.
Did we get it all, guys? Is it good? We got it all? Okay, good. It's good. We're getting 2 nods from 2 different heads, so that's good. All right, so Titans OTA, let's start there. We got a chance on Wednesday, the media, to go out and be at Titans practice. It's not all that different from OTAs last week. The same names that weren't there this week. Again, I think that's probably going to cost the Titans at least 2 or 3 games.
Right. I mean, obviously, team chemistry is at the worst it's ever been, and Mike Vrabel has completely lost the locker room.
Derrick Henry, Jeffrey Simmons, Taylor Lewan this time was not there. Harold Landry, Nate Davis is still out, and Danico Autry wasn't there as well. So basically, again, some of the same guys.
Everybody that was missing last week plus Taylor Lewan.
So, do you want to talk OTAs, or do we need to get Burks out of the way first?
Let's talk OTAs real quick.
Real football,
real football. Okay. Because I've come to the conclusion, because this morning I was in a group chat and they were talking about how people are really downplaying Chig and not thinking that he's going to be the bigger contributor over Kyle Phillips. And I explained to them, Kyle Phillips is obviously clearing away the best and most prepared rookie so far, right? I mean, from what we've seen at OTAs out of the rookie class, it's probably either him and then McCreary, I would say. But I think that Kyle Phillips has the clearest path to a starting position, a defined role that he can focus on all offseason, and that he's far and away the most prepared and best. So I no offense to Chig Okonkwo, who I think will contribute, but I think expecting him to be 2020 Jonnu Smith, where he's getting 8 touchdowns, is probably a little too much of a weight to bear for him.
That's a lot. Okay, so that's a lot. Let's try to check these off one at a time. I do not think Kyle Phillips has the clearest path to a starting spot.
Who do you think?
I think Roger McCreary might actually have the fastest path, because that's tied to Caleb Farley's availability.
So you're saying on this show that Caleb Farley sucks?
I don't believe those were the words I used. No, Caleb. I just think McCreary is a starting piece. It's one of those where like I could see him he plays 16 games and starts 3.
Yeah,
but it depends on what the other team's formation is when they come out and like what you actually see. I think Phillips, to be a starter, like the true number 3 in the slot, I think, again, a lot of that depends on the formation the Titans are going to be running. I could see Chigakonkwo starting because if they're coming out in 12 personnel.
Well, let me clarify what I
yeah.
mean by starting is technically the guy with the most snaps out of all the rookies on the offense, right?
Do you think he's going to play more snaps than Treylon Burks?
Well, I'm excluding Treylon Burks. I'm trying to talk about people that are got their slot specific, right? He is slot specific.
Right.
He's going to play a lot from the slot, and he's going to play more than he's going to see more snaps than Chig. He's going to see more snaps than NPF. He's probably going to see more snaps than McCreary. I would think that would be the way to roll.
I think this is going to be a great debate to track because I think all of them sort of have one foot in the starting lineup,
right,
and one foot.
I think NPF, Theo Jackson, and Malik Willis obviously do not have starting potential without barring an injury.
I think that's true. And if NPF earns his way into the starting lineup, they have a much better offensive line situation than we expected, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. I do think that you're right that to say who on this roster does what Kyle Phillips does for this team, could he be number one at that? I think that's probably fair. I think McCreary is going to get a lot of snaps the way Molden did last year, but in a different position. And then I think Chigakonkwo is really fascinating as a skill set and what they're going to do with him because they're going to move him all over the place. They're going to use him in the run game. They're going to use him motion. They're going to use him in the passing game. Like, I think he's got a chance to be a really versatile and interesting piece, but I agree he is clearly tight end number 2, and he's only really a starter if they're in 12 personnel.
Well, and then when
I guess you've convinced me to come around to what you're saying, which is that outside of Treylon Burks being a starting wide receiver, what Kyle Phillips does for this team. And listen, when you watch him run drills, like he just runs the drill perfectly.
Well, and
he just does everything exactly the way he's coached to do it, which I know sounds cliche, but like it's true.
Well, when you're looking at what Anthony Firkser got, and I'm not saying when I say this, Chigakonkwo is obviously in my mind better than Anthony Firkser.
Right.
But Anthony Firkser was sort of the de facto pass catching tight end role, and that's pretty much what Chig's going to be, right?
3rd and 11, they're going to go Firkser split out in the slot or on the wing, or I would agree.
And because Chig obviously has a long way to go in blocking. He's a willing blocker, obviously, but he still has a long way to learn to do that in an NFL game consistently, where he'll see more of the field, and that comes in year 2, something like that in my mind. But Firkser last year, 33% snap counts. You think that's probably where Phillips will be over 33% in my mind. I think that everybody, and you saw it come up in the press conference, this idea that Tim Kelly's addition and Chig's addition means more 12 personnel. Will it mean more 12 personnel than last year? Yes. Will it? Because 12 personnel has always been the second or oftentimes first personnel grouping for this Tennessee team.
Right.
It's not going to be some massive shift where, okay, we're running 12 personnel a lot more than any other team in the NFL. I think it's going to be still 11 personnel dominates what this is, which means Kyle Phillips is going to
over Chig. Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that would be a great thing to track throughout the course of the season excuse me. See, I'm getting verklempt here. Which one of these guys, plays more. I do agree with your basic point, though, that Kyle Phillips, and he actually he went up for a pass in team drills, and I think it was Shaim Carter who was like overreacting to every play. Like, clearly these guys know that they're fighting for their lives and their careers, and I have an understanding about that. But he kind of got to the ball late, and Phillips was holding his shoulder and was hurting a little bit, and he walks over to the side, and you never know. It's like that first 5 minutes of a play where you're like, is this serious? Is it not serious? Is he going inside? Is he not? He came back out a couple plays later, and he was holding his shoulder, and then
no inhaler.
And then he was back out on the field. He was back out in the lineup. And again, more than one occasion. Last week, he had a skinny post route where he caught it, and there was nobody within 15 yards of him, Kyle Phillips. He did the same thing on Wednesday where he caught a really nice pass over the middle, which I don't think people think of. They think more the bubble screens and the out routes and the digs and the cross formations and
that's not how this offense really wants to run. They want to go across the middle. They want to attack the middle.
And they threw him the ball a couple times, and he made a couple plays. So I think he's got every piece that they need. Now, when you mix in Des Fitzpatrick's skill set versus Racey McMath's skill set versus the bigger guys, like what do they need in a particular matchup with the defensive scheme? That could change that.
Well, and
but
also, Burks will probably play in the slot too. But I think when you're talking about a team that lacked reliable pass catchers, route runners, hands from that slot position last year with Chester Rogers, with even A.J. Brown coming out of the slot, with Anthony Ferguson coming out of the slot, all dropping balls or not being and having the awareness to be far enough down the field to get a first down. Kyle Phillips washes those worries away. And I know I'm putting a lot on Kyle Phillips, but
it's a lot for what, a 6th round pick?
Yes, fifth round
pick.
But in all honesty, you're talking about probably one of the better route runners in the class. John Mechie, obviously the best route runner, and I hate that we have to see him twice a year on the Texans team. But I think that when you're talking about the upgrade of Kyle Phillips over what they had last year, that's going to, and the way that he's attacking OTAs matters, the way he's not messing up matters to how this team has confidence in a rookie to put them on the field. Case in point, Elijah Molden last year. Case in point, probably Roger McCreary is going to see a lot more snaps than usual. As long as he continues this trend, he's going to see the field more often than not.
And I will say Wednesday was sloppy by the pass catchers in general. There were a lot of drop passes, like Des Fitzpatrick. I mean, even in drills, they were kind of sloppy. And I don't know if that was because it was, the temperature. Like I just think it was a sloppy day in general for the pass catcher. So I don't think that there was too much to be taken from that. Like Phillips dropped a pass and then he comes back and he does the drill again and he's fine. So I think, again, speaking of pass catching, and I don't know why I always think about this, but I see it every time. Hassan Haskins is a great hands catcher. Like he catches the football very smoothly, whether it's the running back out, whether it's over the middle, the angle route. Like he does not fight it. He's out here with it. And I'm really impressed with how he catches the football.
I'm anxious to see how Haskins, how Radens, and I know he's not technically a rookie.
I don't know how well he catches the football.
Well, I'm getting there. Phillips, I'm anxious to see how those guys, their OTAs translate to the pads on. That's what I'm anxious to see. What does Phillips lose when the pad's on? What does Haskins lose when the pad's on?
He's not big.
Phillips. So I'm anxious to see how long can Treylon Burks stay on the field with the pads on, extra weight on him, that fat ass. But the defense, we want to talk a little bit about the defense, Rashad Weaver, but Peavy, the defensive tackle that has arms like a pterodactyl, Teron Davenport put out a video of him, and it is true. He looks like he's a monster of a man. And it makes me think with that length and that amount of space that he can eat up, he's maybe the UDFA with the best path to making the team, right?
That's possible. And by the way, like Taylor and George have some questions about the offensive line, wide receiver, them signing some stuff. We'll get to that here coming up in just a second. So we're not ignoring you guys. I think Jaden Peavy, this is a 6'5", 310-pounder. This is a big-time recruit that went to A&M. He's a big-time prospect from a talent perspective. A little surprised that he probably didn't get drafted. Same thing with DeMarvin Leal, who fell down the board. I was a little surprised that both those guys fell where they did. I think he's one of the guys that we talked about on the show, of all because I think Swilling, the corner, Trey Swilling, was out there a lot too. And he looks like a guy that could get some reps, who I believe is also an undrafted free agent and out of Georgia Tech, I believe. And I thought it was, if you trust Mike Vrabel, Shane Bowen, and this defensive front coaching staff, which I don't know why you wouldn't.
Right.
I think this is a guy that's very interesting. They develop merch. They develop TR Tart. They're Derek Roberson was a nice piece for them as a backup for a little while. They developed Odenighi. Like I think that once they get their hands on somebody, the physical traits have always been there for PV. So again, it's OTAs. You got to be careful to not overreact to just sheer size, because like I look at Rashad Weaver in the same boat and I go, oh my God, the length and the range and the arms and the size, and like he and Radens went head to head a little bit this on Wednesday. That was fun to watch. They've got some big bodies in the front seven to work with. It's all about, can they mold them into NFL players? And I think PB's got a chance.
Well, speaking of big bodies, do you want to talk about Treylon Burks?
I set you up for that one, didn't I?
You did.
So I realize that this is a talk show and we're going to talk about Treylon Burks, and everyone else has talk shows and they have to talk about Treylon Burks. I think the key as a Titans fan, and what do we preach on the show? No empty calories, right? No pun intended here with Treylon Burks. Who's just
he does not waste a calorie.
He's just eating bags of veggie straws at like 11:30 p.m. at night. That's what I do after my kids go to bed. I realize we have to discuss this. I hope that you come to this show to get a different perspective and a more thoughtful conversation around Treylon Burks. This is not a story. Like, unless there is a camp with pads and a game looming and practice that's real, not he's also a 21-year-old kid who has been becoming a professional human being for the first time in his entire life. He also has been better every practice we've seen him. Yesterday on Wednesday, he was by far the most active. He contributed the most. He participated in every drill. Like, it's just such a non-thing. And I don't like that the national media, just like with Mentorgate, like the national media is what's sparking it. I think most people that are standing on the sidelines watching Treylon Burks and watching, like, we're all fascinated by him, and we all know that's what you guys want to hear about. But none of us are sitting there going like, "Oh my God, is he like?"
I don't think
monitoring
no
it.
one.
That may be true. We're well.
I mean,
some of those folks weren't out there on Wednesday.
Yeah.
We're monitoring it to be able to tell you, like, hey, he didn't do this drill, he did that drill, he went to the facility. Like, we want to be aware of that stuff. I think what's important is the context of all of that. And this is a big dude in college. This is a big dude when they drafted him. He is going to learn how to be a professional. And if he is missing practice 2 weeks before the Giants game, then it's a story. And then it's something we have to be concerned about and talk about.
So where in the offseason program do you think that it would be a cause for concern about his conditioning? Do you think it's going to be in July?
When you show up at camp.
Okay.
And then even then, it's like I don't know. I'm 30.
Because there should be a little bit concern about what he does away from the facility in his downtime, right?
I think that's if you're saying that you're concerned about him, then I think you have to sort of say I'm just concerned with every player. Then what do they do outside of the facility? I'm concerned.
But didn't he have issues in going into his senior year? Sam Pittman's on the record saying that we had to tell him that going out and hunting wild hogs is not going to keep you in shape, and he had to get in shape. Now, in the season, he got in shape, right? And you even on the show Fringe Element, Sam Pittman came on and said there was nobody that worked harder, nobody that did this during the season. And then off season comes for this year, and now the same issues are popping up. So my question to you is, how far into training camp does it become a non-issue? Because to me, if he comes back to training camp because they got about a week and a half left of the current OTAs.
Yeah, and then they don't come back until like late July,
right?
Mid-July.
So by the time they come back, if he's back to square one of what he was in OTAs, that should be a cause for concern in my mind. I think
it's worth asking the questions. I don't think it's a concern. Like, some players like Jamal Lewis famously just never worked out. Like, he's like, I can't lift weights. Now, some of that was some other things he was putting in his body, but like, whatever. Like, some guys just don't need the grind to be as good as they can be. And I'm not suggesting that's what Treylon Burks is. But I think the smart conversation around Burks is it's not a story right now. It could be a story if we are 2 weeks into camp. I'm going to go 2 weeks to answer your question specifically. If we're 2 weeks into camp and there are 10 practices and 3 of them he can't finish because he's out of shape, I would argue that's as much on the Titans for getting him prepared. What do you need to do to be prepared to be a professional in your first ever camp as an adult? Like, this is a child, in my opinion. He's closer to the age of my 5-year-old daughter than he is to me. It would take me 6 months to lose 15 pounds. Probably not 6 months, maybe like 4 months. I'm 39. It would take us 6-8 weeks to lose 15 or 20 pounds to be at playing shape. It takes a 21-year-old a day, like a week to lose 10 pounds or 15 pounds. Like, it doesn't take much. If they want him lower, they can get him lower.
But he has to put in the work. And that's the big thing with the Tennessee Titans. And we saw this with Isaiah Wilson. They weren't really willing to put in any real extra work to make sure that Isaiah Wilson's not going out and partying. You know, because like Jerry Jones, they put someone on Des Bryant when all that stuff went down in a Walmart parking lot. You know, the Titans kind of are like, you sink or swim. If you want to be a part of this team and you want to play football, you as an adult,
you have to have some kind of accountability.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little gray area when you're talking about your first camp.
So
as a rookie.
Well, let me ask you this then. What's wrong? What is Sam Pittman's role in having now 2 players that come to the Tennessee Titans out of shape? Because isn't that a little odd that Sam Pittman, offensive line, for those who don't know, was the offensive line coach for Isaiah Wilson, who Isaiah Wilson had issues
You got to be
in
careful.
college.
You got to be careful when you're bad mouthing Sam Pittman around Aaron Dugan.
Okay. Well, I'm not
He's just
bad
offset here.
mouthing. I'm not bad mouthing Sam Pittman. I'm asking
I think
why is there now two players who have documented issues staying in shape and being self-accountable in college now having that same issue at the start of OTAs for Titans and now 2 years going?
Again, I don't think
first round picks.
I don't think we have evidence yet that Treylon Burks is not accountable and will be out of shape. I think we need to see that actually happen before I accuse him of.
And I agree. I'm just
right.
I'm trying to give you different ways to attack this topic because
it's definitely different
because nobody else is attacking these topics this way.
Well, and
they're just saying he's fat.
And I've got another one. I've got another one for you too that I think is tied into why this like mushroom clouds into like a bigger conversation than we think it really is. I think Isaiah Wilson is completely coincidental. Look at the entirety of every player that look at every player from Georgia over the last 3 to 5 years that's gone into the pros under Kirby Smart's leadership. And like the vast majority of them are playing because they're really good football players. I think Isaiah Wilson is clearly a one-off. They got duped. Everybody sort of got duped with him. And
I'm strictly talking Isaiah Wilson, a football player, and Treylon Burks, the football player, being prepared for rookies, not that they're even anywhere close to being the same person.
Yeah, right, exactly. Burks, I think, is a very humble, very focused, hardworking guy, and we're going to see that. I just think we need to give him a chance to show us that before we like murder the kid. Like, I think we're like decapitating him after like we've seen 3 days of practice.
To me, it's like it's no day pads. 2 of training camp is my limit on saying, okay, there is a concern about Treylon Burks because at some point you have to be in shape, and now that he's trending right, he's trending in the right direction right now.
He was already better this week,
but he's about to be on his own. So can he be? What's the level of accountability between the end of OTAs and training camp? That's where he's got to prove himself.
And I think that's the point when we can start to think about reacting. Like, okay, let's. There's more here, there. We need Vrabel to have a comment about this. He can't just sort of like be deflecting
and Burks was the king of deflecting yesterday during those the media session.
I'm glad that he spoke. I think it does reduce the pressure a little bit when the media wants to speak with you and Ryan Tannehill doesn't do it or David Poyle and John Hines don't do it, and then all of a sudden,
but again, did himself no favors by just not.
I agree with that,
answering the questions, and I think he's just being a good soldier. By the way, I don't think this is Burks being coy. Yeah. This is Burks following the John Robinson, Mike Vrabel script to a T, right?
So, yes, I totally agree with that. So here's another new way to cover this topic that I don't think I've heard yet. And this ties into what Ryan Tannehill said about Malik Willis. I think it ties in technically to the Jimbo Fisher thing as well. This is going to be a little bit more Titans related, but here's my question for you. And that is, do we feel like because I've heard this from, and I work at ESPN, full transparency, and I've talked to some people in the radio department that now have a perspective on Titans Twitter. Like they know that they can say things
and get the clicks,
get the reaction. Yeah. Good Morning Football knows that they can say things. They joke now on like, I think it's Kyle Brand who's always like joking about Titans Twitter. Like my question to you is, this is both a good and bad thing. I think it's good in that the Titans fan base has grown and matured and is now angry about stuff. You're right. Matured is. I meant mature
is a strong word.
Mature in number of years.
Okay,
let's go with that. That they've been around and operating in the social media sphere. I think that it's a double-edged sword. It's good and bad, but that the national media now knows that the Titans are a meaningful topic. Right. That they are a meaningful thing.
Only if they talk bad about it.
But only if they talk bad about him. So my question is that a good thing, a good sign, a good step for Titans Twitter and fans and the media that people are paying a little bit more attention, but only when you guys are acting kind of silly?
I would rather them just not talk about the Titans, to be honest with you.
Really?
The national stage, I don't watch enough of the national shows to really care what they say anymore.
Okay.
Because I mean, at some point they weren't just talking, they were never talking about us. And then they oftentimes, mispronounce players' names. They say stuff that is incorrect. And I watch those shows for other teams, not for my teams, because I know about my team. And as a fan, most fans know about your team. And if you want to know the specific ins and outs and what true opinions of this team should be, you'd go to your local media. You come to us every 1 p.m. on Mondays and Thursdays right here on the live show. So,
and I do think there is some value in the national media paying you more attention. I think there's some value in that because eventually when things do go your way, they're more likely to react to that in a positive way and have something to say.
Right.
So I do think there is some value. Now, I think that a lot of Titans Twitter is overreacted to a lot of this stuff. And I think the local media, especially with mentor stuff, I think the local media did a pretty good job of handling it the right way. And I also think the local media has done a pretty good job of handling the Treylon Burks stuff. I think fans are sometimes, they have the freedom to act silly, but I think that the national media clearly pays more attention, right? When Tannehill says the mentor thing and it explodes, when Albert Breer feels like he's got space to, and said these are the things we knew about him back in the day. Like, why is he holding on to that information? Why is that something he feels that he can come forward? Well, he's going to get engagement. He's going to get clicks. He's going to get traffic, and that's why he's doing it. And so I think that's interesting when it comes to the national media getting involved in the Titans. Finally, it feels like it's happening. So, all right. Anything else on Burks? R.I.P. Fat Burks.
I think you're right. I think for the next 2 weeks it should be kind of a dead topic.
Yeah.
In my mind, you got to wait till training camp happens and let's see what's actually rolling here. When you're talking about the media and talking about, I mean, in all honesty, there's nothing around the story anymore in my mind. You're not going to get the answers that you want. You're not going to figure out why there was an inhaler, why he was out. And you're just not going to get anything out of this team. And that leads us right into our next topic. Dylan Radins in the position of secrets.
Man, they are very sensitive about the offensive line.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
as they should be.
But they do. There's no strategy into not getting this done and figured out, right? I mean, I understand, and maybe not at OTAs, it needs to be figured out necessarily, but being coy about what Dylan Radins is and nobody answering the question. Yesterday, Mike Vrabel finally got it, but the Tim Kelly interview the Todd Downing interview where they're asking him, what position he is. Well, he's playing both. We're not going to pigeonhole him. Then someone actually asking, what position do you think he's in that he should be playing? And he still didn't answer it. And we got the closest thing from Mike Vrabel yesterday to a confirmation that essentially, he's a right tackle.
I mean,
which is great, right? And
yes, I think it's where he should be playing. I think it's what you want to see him develop as. That's how they drafted him. And if that's the position he can play, then that's great. I think it's pretty silly that I'm not allowed to say where he's been lined up. Like,
right.
Mike Vrabel did that for me. I think it is safe to assume that they would like to see Dylan Radins and NPF battle for the starting right tackle spot.
Right.
I think that's a safe assumption that if they both can prove that they can play tackle, that they can battle for that position, and that one of them secures that job, that is best case scenario for the Titans offensive line.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of other bodies that they can rotate through and try at left guard. None of them are going to be as good as Roger Saffold. Let's just be very clear that when Roger Saffold's on the field, he's better. But if you want to talk about Corey Levine or Daniel Munyer or Aaron Brewer or whatever, we can. All those guys have been playing all over the line. Again, we can't, the positional secrecy is very, very strange to me. I don't think it really matters. I think they're very sensitive about the offensive line. You've got Taylor Lewan, you've got Ben Jones, you've got Nate Davis. 3 out of the 5 are set. The other 2 are going to be, they're going to figure them out. This is what camp is for. Like, this is what the offseason and summer is for. Jamarco Jones is mixed into this as well, probably on the outside. They are playing the guys along the line more often, but like, again, they're at different positions. I think they've tried that in the past. And I think this is what you're getting at, right? Like,
right.
Don't
play
them everywhere. Find where they're the best and play them there.
Well, a lot of people are saying, well, there's never been a competition. The Titans aren't known for competitions at certain positions. Well, I saw that and I'm thinking, well, every offensive line iteration since Mike Vrabel's first year, because as the first year from 2017, 2018, all 5 starting offensive linemen came back and they all played. Everything else was a competition. You're talking about right tackle competitions. You're talking about interior right guard position. You're talking about last year was another right tackle position. So this idea that they don't have competitions on the offensive line doesn't make any sense.
Who are they protecting, honestly? Like, what are they trying to? I don't know what they're trying to accomplish.
I don't think there's anything.
What are they doing?
I don't get it. I don't get what they're trying to accomplish. It's maddening. It kind of makes them look a little silly, in my opinion. So I don't understand why
It's also not a huge deal.
It's not a huge
in-
deal, but it
in
is
May,
a huge
June.
in May. But it does. This is what they've done, right? They have done. We've seen them do this and keep doing this. This is not something new. This is something that usually carries in all the way through training camp. Oh, competitions in and out. Oh, this person's in with first team this time. This person's in with first team that time. And they're going back and forth. Oh, and then he's over here. And it's, if you believe that Radens is a tackle, play him at right tackle day one of training camp and let him keep going, let him get comfortable, because it's still him playing at a position that he's not used to. But
if I was a gambling person, I would guess, which I occasionally am.
Yeah.
I identify as a gambler. I think that's what's going to happen. And again, I think if you're a Titans fan, you want to see MPF and Dylan Radens battle in camp for the right tackle spot, and then one of them to win the job securely. I think that's what's best for the Titans. Now, here I'll posit a theory on why that they're being secretive about this, and it's not just the offensive line. Like, they're basically saying, hey, you can't talk about anybody that lines up in positions, anything that creates competitive balance, you can't talk about. Which, whatever, it's fine. It's their rules. They can do whatever they want. It's OTAs. But here's what I would say: if it doesn't work out, their entire season is tied to the offensive line.
right.
The entire season is tied to the offensive. Derrick Henry's success, Ryan Tannehill's success, Treylon Burke's success, Robert Woods' success, the Titans' offensive success, their ability to win the division and make a playoff game and win a playoff game is tied to what they decide and what they do on the offensive line. The offensive line is the biggest question on this team, and if they don't figure it out, they're FUBAR, and that's where I think that's why they're being sensitive about it.
I also want to talk about this thing that got brought up at the press conference. Were you there at the Todd Downing?
I was there for all of Shane Bowen. I missed some of Todd Downing.
Okay.
I got to drop the kids off at daycare.
So at the let me know next time and we'll dock your pay. The offensive line,
children are more important than Todd Downing. I'm sorry.
There was a question when they were going through this whole offensive line thing. They were talking. Todd Downing was talking about competition.
Yep.
Someone's brought up, well, Taylor Lewan, Ben Jones, and Nate Davis aren't competing. And I don't know who said that, and it may have been in the form of a question. But
I would hope.
What a ridiculous freaking question. I mean, are we really going to compare what Dylan Radens and these other guys are doing to what Taylor Lewan, who is an All-Pro, Nate Davis, who got an All-Pro vote, and Ben Jones is one of the best centers in the league?
Started like 97 out of 98 games.
Why the hell would they even be competing anyway? It's not. They're
not even there.
Yeah. Well, I just don't get the idea that they should be competing. If Dylan Radens and NPF and Jamarco Jones and all these other guys are competing for starting spots, why isn't everybody competing for starting spots? Which is the most ridiculous fucking thing. It's absurd. Was an absurd question.
I think what's funny is the whole Vrabel Robinson thing, where like every job is up for grabs at all times.
Yeah.
I think that's true in theory, but in practice, we know that's not true. Like, you just signed Ben Jones to a 2-year extension and brought him back because he's your starting center. I mean,
you're in a room with Todd Downing and you have questions you can ask, and that's one of your go-to questions. Like this, I mean, it's almost like trying to get a gotcha question, which was like,
I'm with you.
That was not a gotcha question. That is just utterly ridiculous stupidity spewing out of someone's mouth.
And again, I watch press conferences like for like the event that it is. Like, I study human behavior and the psychology of an answer and a question and the tone and your combative nature. And like, you don't get a lot of substance. And this is not a Titans thing. This is like across all press conferences. In that setting, you don't get a lot of really great substantive answers about stuff. You can't spend a lot of time on topics and discuss things. They're sort of needed. They're a necessary part of the media so that people can write stories and be on deadline and finish things. And it's all very important. I actually view the press conference as like the event itself. Like, I want to see how, and that's the kind of thing that I notice where you go, well, and I noticed this with an antagonistic question at David Poyle at the Preds press conference, where he was like, I thought he gave a bad answer. And it kind of came off as like trying to sell people on something that wasn't sellable when he talked about fan apathy for the Preds. And that's the kind of stuff that I think is interesting. And Malik Willis, when his first press conference came up, I wanted to see, well, like body language. Does he look people in the eyes? How does he answer? Is he confident in what he thinks and feels? And does he have the right, like, it's more about that than the actual substance of the words. And so again, I think they're very sensitive about the offensive line because they know most of their offensive season is tied to what happens at that position. I think their entire season is tied to the offensive line. Like, we've talked about it. We're not worried about the pass catchers as much as probably outsiders are.
So we know that Radens is a tackle, Do you think he's the long-term solution? They're looking at him as the long-term solution for right tackle, or are they looking at NPF? Because I almost think that it's going to be, okay, we're going to get Radens a lot of starting reps this year. We're going to possibly let Lawan go, move Radens over to the left and NPF over to the right.
I think Petit Frere has the raw physical talent to play left tackle. Having seen 0 games of NPF, not a single training camp with NPF, and having Radens playing 3 games basically last year where he actually got meaningful snaps. He played the entire San Francisco game without playing the year before, right? He sat out the year before he got drafted. I think we need to see a lot more before we can say one of these guys can replace Taylor Lewan.
Right.
Now, I do not see the heir apparent to Taylor Lewan on the roster currently.
Okay.
That could change if Dylan Radens or NPF does what Nate Davis did, right? Where he kind of got through his rookie problems, and then all of a sudden, back half of that season, he was one of the best guards in football, right? And so I think I just need to see it from one of those guys. They're both, I mean, everybody on an NFL practice field is a physical specimen. Like, it's hard to look at a guy. It's not like college when you can go to a practice facility and be like, those are walk-ons.
Gotcha.
Like, you can tell these two guys, especially Radens and NPF, they are physically very impressive individuals. The question is, can they handle the blindside duties? I don't see either one of them being the heir apparent to Taylor Lewan. That could change if one of them has a great season this year.
And this just hit me, and I meant to write it down in my notes, but there was I heard a spot of Trevor Sikkema. Is it Simica or Sikkema? I don't know. Tampa Bay Trey. He works at PFF, but he talked about Mike Vrabel. And this was on the midday show for 104.5 Bucks show. And he talked about essentially that at some point, Mike Vrabel's in the discussion with Mike Tomlin, that this guy is just going to have a team that's going to try to win every week and going to be a winner more often than not. And that we don't need to be worried about anything. And that's kind of where I'm at with this offensive line. I think at this
Keith
point,
Carter's pretty trustworthy guy at this point.
I almost think it's almost a troll job right now. It's early May. They're a little bored. I think it may be a little bit of a troll job.
I think when they intentionally skip a drill with Treylon Burks, I looked at a couple people that were next to me and I'm like, I hope they're doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, I hope the Titans are doing this on purpose just to mess with us.
I wouldn't put it past them. So that's why I think if the plan isn't for Radens, I think the plan is one thing. What it happens to be is a different thing, right? The plan is for Radens and NPF to be your bookend tackles, hopefully in 2023. You
think they want to move on from Lewan that quickly?
I think that they would rather have the money, but that also says that Radens and NPF would be ready, right? They hit on both those draft picks, second round pick and a third round pick. They hit on them after busting on Isaiah Wilson, and they feel good enough about those offensive tackles that they could put Radens over to the left.
Yeah.
They can in his natural spot.
Yeah.
And put NPF, who is, in my opinion, a much better right tackle than left tackle, in his natural spot.
Yeah.
That's the plan. Does that happen? That's debatable. But I think if that's not the plan,
they would have to show us a lot.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is if that's not their plan, then why draft 2 right tackles? Essentially, because that's what you're saying. If that's not the plan.
So, I think what you do is you draft right tackles, hoping that they're left tackles.
You just collect them like cornerbacks.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, if you're again, I mean, Isaiah Wilson, Dylan Radens, NPF. Like, the idea was they all could play left tackle. One of them clearly couldn't do anything.
Right.
One of them might be your starting right tackle, and if one of them can actually replace Taylor Lewan, then I think you've come out ahead with two out of 3 draft picks. So, I am hesitant to put that much pressure on 2 guys to replace the highest paid offensive tackle when he signed the contract in Taylor Lewan. I think many people, this is also one of those media problems where I think it's a lot of stupid questions about Taylor Lewan, what he does off the field, like with his own stuff. I think that's super overblown. Like, I don't care. I don't
it's like this. It's old men that are saying it. The old men in the media
can football players not have 2 things in their heads at one time? Like, are they not allowed to do that?
They can't have jokes. They can't. They have to have this demeanor about them, because that's another thing that now Dylan Radens is under attack.
Oh my god!
By PK. PK has to pick at least one person every year, every offseason, to just berate and attack. I mean, there were stories that PK wrote about Dylan Radens. over there getting Gatorade by himself or standing by heater by himself. And now his demeanor at practice, he's not answering questions in a manner that screams that he's a starter and all this stuff. All this petty bullshit.
Having a sense of humor is somehow
it's ridiculous.
Keeps you from blocking people.
Okay, so you watched Rashad Weaver. You mentioned Rashad Weaver versus Dylan Radins.
That was one of my favorite parts of practice.
Did the demeanor and the joking really affect his play?
Well, what he did is he told a couple of dad jokes to Rashad Weaver, and then Weaver could not execute his pass rush moves after that.
Gotcha. Oh, so that's great.
So he won the battle through humor and comedy. No, there was one time where Burks lined up with Christian Fulton, and like we all like kind of perked up a bit, and I was like, "This is going to be fun," and it was like a draw. I was like, "Damn, that would have been so good to watch Fulton and Burks go head to head on a pass route." But no, watching Weaver and Radins, it's fun to watch those two guys go together because
iron sharpens iron.
You can see the talent, especially with Weaver, how big he is, how rangy he is. I mean, physically, he is every bit the part of an outside linebacker who could slide in on like third downs, for example, like we talked about last week, a Danico Autry type of player. I think he's a little bit more athletic and can play outside, but watching them go head to head, it's just fun because it's just sort of like nerdy football stuff. When they do stunts and like Radins and they're like picking it up well. They're handing off guys well in the pass rush. Again, no pads. Like there's not even freaking pads on right now. So it's just fun to watch, man. It's fun to watch when two guys have that kind of talent and they're going head to head and you think, all right, these guys could both do this.
Does an offensive line from left to right, Lawan, Aaron Brewer, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, Dylan Radins, inspire you with confidence? Because the Tennessee Titans are now up to around $13 million in cap space because the Julio Jones trade or the Julio Jones cut and the dead money became official today. A lot of people thought it was yesterday, but I guess they don't understand what post June 1st means. I saw that all day yesterday.
Where's the money?
Yeah. So obviously
not after June 1st yet.
Yeah. So obviously people want a left guard signed. I'm to the point though, left guard, wide receiver, obviously Eric Flowers, Will Fuller. We've already talked about how those guys could change the offense and make the offense better. So we don't need to talk about that. But there is a realistic chance and a realistic possibility, and we saw it with tight end last year, that they are content with those five as their starting offensive linemen. And I'll repeat it again. Lawan, Brewer, Ben Jones, Nate Davis, and Dylan Radins.
I think if you mix in Munier, Levine, Jones, and Petit Frere, I think you get with that. If that's your four sort of rotational backup pieces, let's say, I feel pretty good about that. Again, especially if it's clear. Like this is what I always say about quarterback battles. Like what you want as a fan during a quarterback battle is for it to be so obvious that it's not about, like your coach can just say it's so and so the starter.
Right. And I think that's where the media is getting a little antsy. And I agree, right? Like I agree that there should be, that it doesn't instill you with much confidence that Radins can't be named the starter at right tackle. But I also understand that it's OTAs. It's a delicate balance.
I think this is kind of what you're trying to get at, which is that about 2 weeks into camp, you want to see the same guy lining up at right tackle every time with the first team reps. That's what you want. And because that's
what they haven't had in 4 years now.
Exactly. And that's because it's so obvious that again, whoever it is, who cares who it is, that's so obvious that this player forced their decision making, that this person is the starting right tackle, and then they're done. And I think that's what you want. And I think if then your question is, well, because you could have Jones and MPF and Radins all battling for that spot. I think Jones I would put clearly behind those guys. But then you're going, all right, is Brewer good enough to be your left guard? And I think he's shown flashes of being pretty good.
It's kind of like the Dennis Kelly thing to me. Like when my hesitation with Dennis Kelly before he took over right tackle because Isaiah Wilson flamed out was, can he do it over 16 games?
Yeah.
And now it's 17 games. Can Aaron Brewer at his weight, because he's very slim, or at least he was. I mean, I haven't seen Aaron Brewer and I haven't seen him stand on the scale. He could have gained weight.
Got to not make Treylon Burks jokes.
Yeah. But can Aaron Brewer last over 17 weeks as a competent starting left guard? And I think that's the biggest issue that everybody has, is that Flowers would be an immediate upgrade, right? Eric Flowers,
Yeah,
immediate upgrade over
there's-
Aaron Brewer. And Aaron Brewer is your main backup, right? He's your main backup for the guard spot, main backup for Ben Jones.
Sounds pretty good to me.
It's great. And then you obviously have Reigns and NPF fighting it out for right tackle, right? To me, limiting the questions that this team has is the best way to do it. And they have money to do it. But do they want that money for rollover purposes? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. To me, it's if you can get a 1-year deal for somebody.
I would almost sign Eric Flowers to like a 2 or 3 year deal because you
Maybe.
know he's going to be good and then you don't have to worry about it.
How is he? How old is he? He's like 29,
26, 27.
So the point is he still has clearly some
Right.
years. I think the rollover is, and you're the resident capologist on
Yeah.
the show, but I think that's a question. But if you're telling me I could sign a veteran piece for a year, maybe 2, I think now they have the money to do it. I would be. I don't, because I think there's a lot of people that focus on the fantasy positions, and AJ Brown's gone, and
Right.
receivers. Everybody, we're all obsessed with receiver. I do think that where I would invest the money is offensive line. I think that's still a much bigger question about what this team's upside is in the regular season.
I
tied
think
more to the offensive line.
If you're going to invest money in either left guard or wide receiver, and you're only going to invest money in one,
left guard.
I'm going left guard.
I 100% agree.
And
Brace debate.
I will say this, that there is a real possibility that they're going to go in with who they have way into July. You may not see anything in June. You may wait till July and see who's still out there and get them at a bargain, bring them in. The other possibility is that they do want the rollover because they still have Tannehill high on the books.
Oh, you think they're gonna spend $58 million on him?
Well, I'm saying Tannehill's still going to be on the books. Lawan's still going to be on the books. Derrick Henry's technically still on the books. All at high cap.
Simmons new deal.
They may need that $13 million rolled over. They may feel that they need that $13 million because they played 91 different players last year. I don't think that that's the way to attack it by any means, but that is a real possibility for this team.
Let me get you here. You were talking about how like there are people out there that just trust Vrabel and the Titans way, whatever you want to call that. You know, if it's Keith Carter developing an offensive lineman, do we trust his ability, right?
Yeah, I mean, even though David Quessenberry was really piss poor as a right tackle, when Taylor Lewan went down in 2020, and they had Tyson Braylow and David Quessenberry at left tackle,
they were great.
They were great
for the situation,
the situation that they were in, and that's because of Keith Carter.
So we trust John Robinson in general to build a roster. We trust Mike Vrabel in general to build a culture in a locker room and lead a group of men.
Yeah,
we trust Keith Carter in general to players generally play their best football after he's worked with them on the offensive line. We trust Vrabel and Bowen to develop a front seven collection of players, right?
Right.
You see what I'm getting at here? Like at some point, we just have to go, you know what? I trust the process here, not to transition into Saban directly, but like I just sort of trust the process. And you know who else I trust? Ben Marino. Like I trust the capology ability to work contracts and get the money where it needs to be and use the right money at the right time for the right thing. It doesn't mean every move has been perfect. It doesn't mean Jadeveon Clowney was a good decision or, drafting Kevin Dodd or who was the extension that Vic Beasley, right? Famously, Vic Beasley was a bad signing. There's some misses in there, but do I trust their ability to manage the cap? Yeah, I do. Just the same way I trust them to develop offensive linemen, front seven players.
Well, and what I'm saying is sometimes maybe managing the cap in their eyes going in the future is having that 13 million or at least maybe 10 million because there'll probably be some injuries and people signed and stuff like that to roll over to the next season.
I want a new piece to help this team win now, but that may not be the plan that they're thinking about. And I trust them
because everybody said, oh, well, even Jim Wyatt in his mailbag said, well, I expect them to do this was last offseason. I expect them to buy or expect them to sign another tight end. I expect them to bring in a tight end or go out and get a tight end. And they did. And it was all off season. I kept telling people the season's about to start. Like if they're not here, if they're not here in training camp, I don't know if they're going to do a big signing.
I agree.
And I think that the biggest signings that you can do for this team that immediately helps is going to be Eric Flowers, going to be Will Fuller, because Keelan Cole's already gone. I was about to say you could sign him, but he's already gone.
Yeah, I was going to say.
They may save that $13 million and see that they're in the thick of it. And OBJ is looking good in November and he's still out on the market. They may end up trying to sign him with that $13 million. Him and Robert Woods get along really well.
I trust the process here.
Yeah.
Which brings us to, unless you got any more things you need to get off your chest about the Titans.
No.
Okay. Which brings us to Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher in the SEC meetings down in Destin. And I know you've got some questions, and so I'll try to lay out exactly what actually happened, which is we don't have a vote on scheduling. I've talked to a lot
they're
of.
not going to do a vote at all on the scheduling.
It's going to happen at some point
this week.
It could be as early as this weekend. It's probably going to happen next week or the week after that. I've talked to a lot of people about this, and what I can tell you is that it's going to end up at 9 at some point.
Gotcha.
It's going to end up at 9 games at some point. If that's this season or next season or when Texas and Oklahoma come in, I think even the 8 gamers, and again, this is all going to be decided by presidents and ADs, not coaches, because we all know Clark Lee doesn't want 9 games. He wants to get to a bowl game.
Right.
I think we are at a position where the writing's on the wall. We're going to end up at 9 games. How do we make that equitable? How do we make that financially viable? How do we make that balanced? I think that's all coming. What actually happened this week was Greg Sankey told everyone to shut the hell up. Like all you children that are my football coaches, stop it. Stop acting like children in the media. Because Jimbo Fisher was like, he was just shut down the whole time. Saban said like one thing. He was like, hey, I didn't say anything. Anybody did anything wrong. And then they all kind of shut their mouths. And so I think that was number one. Sankey showed some leadership. They talked a lot about name, image, and likeness. Didn't accomplish a damn thing because nobody has an answer.
Well, I will say something did get accomplished in that basically Jimbo Fisher's already backed down away from Saban and turned it into, oh, well, we actually agree. That was his comments either this morning or yesterday, which we said.
Like he said it in the damn thing. He goes, I want a unified set of regulations and guidelines. I'm like, that's all Nick Saban.
And now Jimbo Fisher has come back down to earth off his throne of mightiness up there and has said that, well, you know, we've moved past it. And
not gonna talk about it anymore.
We're going to move forward and trying to fix NIL.
On to Cincinnati, not going to talk about it.
So no divisions.
Here's the problem.
For sure.
Yes, I'll get to that in a second. I just want one more thing on the NIL. Here's the problem. If you hear somebody complaining, coach, media, fan, friend, whatever, says, hey, listen, we just need unified guidelines and guardrails on name, image, and likeness. Ask them what that means.
Right.
Because right now, no one has a freaking clue. No one has an answer. Congress doesn't have an answer. The NCAA doesn't have an answer. No one has an answer. I can tell you what I think could work, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an NCAA person. I can't give you all the minutia that needs to be put in place. No one has an answer for this.
Well, Lane Kiffin did about May 25th. He was interviewed, and he said it's moving towards a salary cap. Yes. Like that's what it's going to have to be.
Saban's kind of alluded to that too, and I have said that on this show. We have gentlemen as well, which is you're going to go play in the SEC. You're going to be on scholarship in the SEC as a football player. You're going to get $50,000 a year. Period. Like that's where we're headed because you don't want to be an employee because then you can get fired after like dropping a punt. We don't want that with college athletes. You can be taxed federally. Like we don't want that. There is some protections the amateur model does provide the athletes. So that's sort of like they spend a lot of time on that, but there are no answers yet. So just sort of know that's what you need to know about NIL. No divisions for the SEC, which I think is great. I think it's awesome. Texas and Oklahoma have been involved in these processes. So when you hear about the scheduling model, know that Texas and Oklahoma have some input legally, very delicately. And then, of course, the pod system is gone too, which is great because the pod system, I thought the pod system was just a ridiculous. And there were people that I've heard on the radio and on Twitter love the pod idea and don't understand what's going away. It was the most ridiculous way to schedule and do this whole thing. And really 3 and 6 model, which is 3 permanent opponents and then 6 rotating. Yeah. It's sort of kind of is a pod, but it's not because what you're forcing is the 3 to be the same in the same group. Right. And in the 3 and 6 model, it's just what rivalries do we want to protect? Yep. And what new ones do we want to present and create for the league? And so I think all of this is going to happen at the same time. We're going to get Texas and Oklahoma. We're going to get playoff expansion. We're going to get a new 9-game schedule with the 3 and 6 model. And that's all going to happen in like 2025. Like, I think it's all going to happen at some point at the same time. What is something that people can expect to come out of these meetings or that may affect maybe this season or next season? Not a whole lot, honestly, because there are no answers on NIL. I think there was some talk about the transfer portal and allowing players to transfer inside the SEC because their rules are actually more strict than the rules out in the NCAA. So like, why would we let our players leave the conference? Like, right. So there's something like that could be put into place right away. But otherwise, not a lot. This was dominated by Fisher, Saban, garbage. And it was kind of a letdown, right? I mean, there's nothing so far has really been like that thing to come from the SEC meeting where everybody's talking about it. The thing is going to be when they actually do vote on 8 or 9 games. Yeah. And that could happen today. It could happen this weekend. It could happen next
Do you
week.
think it's still almost an even split between the teams voting on it?
I would say so. If Texas and Oklahoma were legally allowed to vote, I would say no, the Nines would have it slightly.
Gotcha.
Because they are not allowed to be voting members yet, because they're not members of the SEC, I think you're right that it's probably still pretty split with the obvious ones: Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Missouri, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas. I think I got them all. And then the ones who've won national titles,
right?
Basically, which is the haves, if you want to call them that, which does include Tennessee, because they have a bigger budget and have won national titles. So I think it's still split. It means they don't have enough votes for 9, because otherwise that would have already been announced. I think what they need to do is massage some of the permanent opponents, massage some of the rules, massage some of the things.
Is it kind of like a Senate? Like when there's a bill that you need to get passed, you have to go to this senator across the aisle and say, "I'm going to give you this if you give me that."
I think that's where they're at. And even the people who are going to vote for 8 games understand that eventually where this is all going is going to be 9 games, because it's more TV money, it's more inventory, it's better for fans, it's more good games in your conference. If you're going to get rid of divisions, you're going to put them all together anyway. Why play 8 of them? Why not play 9 of them?
Yeah, I don't see any downside to the 9 games, to be honest with you. No real downside. Well, I know there are negatives.
It's Vandy not getting a bowl game. It's
well, I mean, let's be honest. You know, they're really not going to ever get a bowl game.
But the coaches and the ADs want what's best for their program, so they're going to vote for 8. I think what's going to happen is, like, if you can give Kentucky and Missouri and South Carolina and Vanderbilt maybe, like, quote unquote easier permanent opponents, maybe, or allow them the freedom to schedule differently in those other 3 games, right? Like, if right now you're requiring another P5 opponent on top of 9, so you have to play 10 Power 5 opponents, maybe you're going, okay, you don't have to play that 10. Like,
gotcha.
This is your senatorial kind of, like, they're wheeling and dealing right now behind the scenes. I just think there's too much money to be made. Too many people want it like this, and we're all, again, from all reports, all of it's heading towards 9 games. And if you want to hear more and a lot more detail, Fringe Element podcast out on Thursday. Ralph Russo with Aaron Dugan and myself. He did all kinds of. He went even deeper than this into what happened this week. So make sure you check out the show. All the other shows, F-Word show, all that good stuff. So
you got something you need to get off your chest.
Yeah. So my 4-year-old, and I was so happy. This is about ticketing and ticket prices and fees. And I know everybody complains about fees, right? You buy tickets and you go, oh, $25. That's nice. And then you cash out and you're like, $48.
Right.
How the fuck did that happen? And you look at it and you're like, service charge and handling charge and venue charge. And you're just looking at all this crap. And I know this is not a new complaint, but my 4-year-old, I have 2 girls, 5 and 4. They have had nothing but princess and Disney rainbow unicorn parties their entire lives. My 4-year-old this April wanted a monster truck party. First time ever. I was like, hell yes.
Yeah.
So I went all out. We bought her like 47 monster trucks and like monster truck cakes and monster truck banners hanging over here. And like, I was like, yeah.
What's her favorite monster truck?
She doesn't know like the names of them. The glow in the dark one is her favorite one right now, because that one glows in the dark. Got a remote control monster truck, like just, monster truck wall to wall, because finally it wasn't Disney princesses.
Right.
And so she's all into it. And I go to buy tickets to the Monster Jam at Nissan Stadium. And even like the cheapest ticket's like $20. So I'm like, okay, this is not bad. $80 for a family of 4, not a big deal. No big deal. I go to cash out and it was $190 total after everything. And I text my wife and I was like, we got to do this because we want to take her because she's in love with monster trucks.
Right.
How can we get to why are we at the point where it's equally as much money in fees? Like, I understand fees. I'm not arguing against fees altogether, but why is it equal? Like,
it shouldn't be
just
equal.
tell me just say $39 for the ticket.
Right.
Don't say $20. Say $39 for the ticket.
It's funny you brought this up because today I was looking at gym memberships, and now they're doing service fees on top of gym memberships, which I thought was illegal in the state of Tennessee, but it's a setup fee now. So
to like kickstart your
to kickstart. So not only am I having to pay a service fee for each of our memberships, our potential memberships, we haven't decided if we're going to choose this place or not, but they also are going to do service fees on. I just don't understand that whole idea that now gyms need service fees to cover whatever cost they got.
Now, at least there's like a lot of options for that.
Yeah.
As a parent of a kid who loves this particular thing right now in her life, like she may never care about monster trucks ever again the rest of her life. But like, I don't have another option. I can't say like if I'm either a bad father or I'm getting raked over the coals with fees. Like those are my two choices. Those are both bad. So I'm going to pay the fees and I'm going to take my kid and make her happy.
Yeah.
You can at least shop the memberships. Like you can go around and use that hopefully against somebody and use it to get a better deal. This is the idea that we can do this to people. Like, all right, you're going to spend $89 on tickets and $89 on fees.
I'm waiting for the grocery stores to do like a fee, a stocking fee or something like that. You know, you're going to get your receipt and see that.
8 more cents for every apple.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about more costs for groceries right now. Let's not.
Yeah, egg shortage, big thing.
Is it well, I know be ready for the wheat shortage too. That's coming, and I don't say that jokingly. Like obviously, there's lots of worldwide stuff.
It's good if you're on a low carb diet or going to go on a low carb diet. Don't need wheat.
Not a bad idea. Yeah. Just cut it out. Help out the worldwide global wheat shortage. Which you come to when you come to a football show, you get analysis. You get analysis on global wheat markets.
Yeah,
that's what we do here.
I asked on the Football and Other Efforts show, just to plug it. We had Stoney Keeley of Sobros Network on, and we talked about Traylon Burks. And I posed the question: if Traylon Burks is out of shape, what does that make the three of us?
Yeah, and you could probably include me in that as well. Again, it would take me 6 or 7 weeks to lose the weight that it could take Traylon Burks a week to lose.
Right.
Let's just remember, 21-year-olds have a real high metabolism. So pour all the gravy on you want, man, Lebowski. I love it. All right. Anything else? I think we're good.
I think we're good.
Cast Collective, of course, is our studio. Great to be back in here. Cast_collective on Instagram for any of your small events, office party needs, anything you want here. They'll take care of you. Cast_collective on the DMs there for Instagram. Kingston Group, special thanks to you guys for supporting us each and every episode. BuildKG.com is the website. Make sure you check that out. Broadway Sports Media, F words. Subscribe to the YouTube page, please. That's one of the nicest things you could do for us. So go to the
set
YouTube
notifications and come talk to us.
Turn the little bell on. Yep. I know we got a bunch of questions in here. We didn't get a chance to answer some of them. George and Taylor and Stoney. We appreciate all you guys watching the show today and hanging out with us. Rate, review, subscribe. It's a podcast as well. So I think that's it. I think that's good. For Zach, I'm Braden. Thanks for hanging out with us. This has been a football show.